When you think of Honda, you probably think reliability, practicality, fuel efficiency, and all that's true. And if you're old enough, like I am, you might remember Honda bringing the very first Honda Civic to the market way back in 1972. That car was small, practical, easy to park, easy on gas, and it had just enough cargo space for your weekly groceries or to run a few errands. It's a practical car that defined Honda's small car market for the next 25 years. Then in 1997, Honda decided the market deserved a sport version of the Honda Civic, and they brought out the Type R. High revving, 8,000 RPM, naturally aspirated four-cylinder, manual transmission, still practical, but also fun. It was a great car with one problem. It was not available here in the US, but it was a sales success. So they did another generation in 2001, and another one in 2007, and another one in 2015. All great cars, none of them available in the US. Finally, with Generation 5 in 2017, the Type R is available worldwide, including the US. And this is the 2020 Type R. Much the same as the 2017, this is the Gen 5 with a few improvements for 2020. So, is this a legit hot hatch? Is it comfortable enough for daily driving? Let's find out. So we are in the 2020 Honda Civic Type R. What makes the Type R a Type R is primarily the drivetrain, the suspension, brakes, etc. All of that stuff that turns a car into a high-performance car. In the case of the Type R, we're talking about a 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder making 306 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Available in the US with only the 6-speed manual transmission, 3 pedals, as it should be, thank you Honda, and sizable brakes, sizable tires, very sticky tires, and all of that good stuff. The thing is, this is still a front-wheel drive car, and front-wheel drive has never been the platform for a truly high-performance car. It doesn't help with acceleration because when you accelerate, weight gets transferred to the back, unweighting your drive wheels. So 20 years ago, if you thought about putting much more than 200 horsepower to the front wheels of a strictly front-wheel drive car, that was a dicey proposition. Things have changed. Now we're talking over 300 horsepower, only to the front drive wheels, and normally that would mean a lot of torque steer. This car, there is almost no torque steer. 10 years ago, I would have thought impossible, but they've done it. Okay, just to demonstrate to you how well this dual axis front suspension geometry works, I'm going to do a hard start here from a standing start. Now this car does have a mechanical limited slip differential also, which helps a great deal. But over 300 horsepower, I would expect the torque steer to be terrible. Here we go, and you'll see that the torque steer is pretty much non-existent. Hands off of the wheel and it just slightly tugged. Hand on the wheel, you would barely feel that. So that's extremely impressive for a front-wheel drive car. Is it as good as all-wheel drive? Is this as good at twisty road corner carving as a Subaru WRX? Hard to say. It's different. It's different. I would expect this car to feel very front heavy, to plow terribly in turns. It doesn't. It doesn't. The weight distribution of this car is about 62% front, 38% back. Those are terrible numbers for a car that you want to throw into corners on a twisty road. The kind of understeer that I would expect with a 62% front weight bias would not be fun at all. However, this car doesn't even plow terribly initially, and if you get on the gas a little bit, it really balances out nicely. The car does have pretty effective rev matching, which Some of us like to turn that off. If you are very familiar with the car, you may want to do that throttle blipping yourself. I actually think this car does it quite well. Clutch in this car is surprisingly light for a 300 horsepower car. Very nice. The shifter, very nice for a front-wheel drive car. Normally, front-wheel drive manual transmission cars have very sloppy shifters, a lot of wobbliness. I had a front-wheel drive car at one point that the shifter was so terrible, a friend of mine described it as a broomstick and a bucket of tennis balls. Whereas a high-performance rear-wheel drive car typically has a much more mechanical, solid-feeling shifter. This feels very, very nice. And for 2020, they've changed the shift knob. It's a nice metal shift knob, brushed finish, and it's a weighted shift knob, which actually helps give it a little bit more of a solid feel. There are 3 drive modes. There's Sport, Comfort, and Plus R. It starts out by default in Sport. That's the normal setting for a Type R, this being a sporting car. In any mode, the steering actually has a pretty good road feel to the steering wheel. It's electric steering, of course, but it is variable assist and variable ratio, and it feels very good. Got a nice little stretch of country road here with some bad pavement. I've got it in Plus R mode right now, so this is the most aggressive mode. The steering is quite heavy. Suspension is the dampers are in their firmest setting now. I'm pleasantly surprised by how non-brittle, non-harsh the ride is, even in Plus R. I ignored this car for the first couple of years that it was on the market here because the look of it told me, it just screamed boy racer to me. So I expected abusively hard seats. I expected any pavement imperfections to be transmitted in a very harsh way. I have to take all of that back. I'm pleasantly surprised. Even here on rough pavement in Plus R, it's firm, but it's not abusive. Well done, Honda. Very nice. So what's it like inside? Much like it was when it was introduced in 2017, really. There are some hard plastics. I mean, this is a Honda Civic, essentially. And whenever you take an inexpensive economy car and you juice it up with some fast bits, you end up with a fast economy car. And that's essentially what this is, which is not a bad thing. That helps keep that price at a point where many of us can afford one. So let's talk about those changes for 2020. They're minor, but they affect the suspension, the braking, the cooling, the interior a little bit. So styling slightly. Front and rear bumpers are a little different. The air intakes in the front bumper are a little different. The grille is a little bit larger, and there's actually a different radiator core, so you have improved cooling. The front brakes are different. Now it's a 2-piece rotor, vented. It's much less prone to fade, which is important if you're going to take this car on the track. And it also removes 2.5 pounds of unsprung weight at each front corner. One bit of tech that they've added for 2020 is called the Performance Data Logger, or Honda Log R. There's 3 modes to it. One is called the Performance Monitor. The other is the Log mode, which if you're having a track day using GPS will actually record your lap times. And probably the most important if you're serious about improving your driving is the auto score. Honda has developed an algorithm that, using a lot of sensors on the car, G-force sensors, etc., it scores how smoothly you're driving. It's kind of fun, and it could be a real benefit if you're looking to do some racing or track days, autocrossing, that kind of thing. You want to get better at that. About the acceleration. I'm a little bit disappointed with the way this car accelerates. If you beat it, if you floor it, hang on to that gear, shift, floor it again, it will get you there. If you just have a moment where you want to push down that gas and go, you're going to pass someone, for instance, or you see your opportunity to shoot out into traffic and you've got your opportunity there and you just want to get on it, there's a lag in the response. So normal driving, and I've got it in plus R, so I would think the throttle's going to be responsive. It's going to be now in plus R, okay? I'm cruising along now at about 3,000 RPM. Floor it. 3, 2, 1, floor it. There it goes. How many seconds was that? It does accelerate a bit when you drop the hammer, but it takes a long time for it really to spool up. In fairness, okay, this is an engine that doesn't hit peak horsepower till 6,500 RPM. I'm going to slow down here, put it in second. Now, 4,000 RPM, it should take off like a rocket, okay? 3, 2, 1, floor it. There it goes. If I owned this car and lived with it for a while, maybe I would get used to having to plan ahead to accelerate, but in a 306 horsepower, 3,100 pound car, I should not have to do that. It should be much quicker than that. That's disappointing. So where do we net out on the 2020 Honda Civic Type R? From a practical standpoint, I'm pleasantly surprised and pleased to say that this is a car I could live with on a daily basis, and I think you could too. 4 doors, very comfortable front seats, comfortable back seat for 2 adults, lots of cargo space. It's a practical car in the sense that it's every bit Honda Civic. You're going to have reliability. You can run errands with this thing. If you want to play and go on a twisty road, it's a fun car. From a driving perspective, this is a decent performance car. It puts the power down shockingly well for a front-wheel drive car. It corners very, very nicely. Braking is excellent. Only downside to me, the only thing it fails on a bit is its acceleration, in that there's that lag between flooring it and getting any response. But I could probably get used to it, probably live with that. So I'd give it a thumbs up overall. Check it out. Honda did a good job.